from our experiences and how we interact now. These conversations that we're having we've had these conversations for almost 7 years.
Well, we have to also know like what our triggers are.
Yeah.
Being in a relationship with a person that doesn't understand your triggers really will set you off. Like I know what triggers you, you know what triggers me. So we, and sometimes we still trigger each other, but you have to know how to react to that trigger and how to deal with that person's childhood trauma and how to bring them back down. Not if you have a bad partner, that person will. I'm not saying bad partner as in like a bad partner and like a bad wife or a bad husband. I'm just saying someone that doesn't know how to really read your triggers,
can't read your emotions.
Can't read your emotions, then it becomes hard to be in a relationship with that person because they don't understand. By prime example, when I get upset or I'm pissed off,
you ice me out.
I might need a day or two or an hour or whatever to just leave me alone.
Yeah.
Just leave me alone, But when you have a partner, and you usually do, and the same goes for you, you want to be left alone. But when you have a partner, like in my first marriage, for example, that didn't understand my trigger, didn't understand, just leave me alone, give me time to cool off. They wanted to deal with it then and there, hot, mad.
But those are also wounds that they were dealing with.
But they never knew how to deal with.
Right.
So, it goes both ways. I didn't understand that, and she didn't understand that, so it became harder. But neither one of us at that time in our lives knew how to look into ourselves to figure that out together.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. It was like adding fuel to the fire. It was just making it worse. Right.
Right. So, it's the same thing with these parents. They think in their heads, because they haven't done any kind of work on the inside, that they've done everything they can possibly do. They think that because they've given the kid a roof over their head, or that they.
I think that's Great Depression thinking, though, right?
I'm not telling you that's right. I'm telling you that's excuses my dad used to always tell
right.
me. I helped buy you a car. These are the things that you're supposed to do as a parent. These aren't things that you're doing. You brought the kids into this world. That's your responsibility. That's the least amount of things you're supposed to do. Now, you being open and thinking that, you have to be able to look into yourself and say, okay, why is my kid behaving this way?
Right.
Sit down and try to have a car. And I'm telling you, these are not easy conversations. This is not a conversation. If you're having trouble with your kid now, this is not a conversation you're going to, be able to break into 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times.
But let me challenge this question, because most parents that haven't done the work like you and I have would get extremely uncomfortable in this kind of situation. So, like, what advice would you give to a parent that maybe is having a challenge of looking inward? Like, what would you think?
Listen to your kid. Even if you think it's wrong, let their voice be heard. Try to understand where they're coming from. Don't brush it off. I'm not telling you to cave into what they're saying or what they're demanding or what they're asking for, but try to understand it from their perspective, because they're also a person too.
Right.
They need to be heard. That's me as a kid. I was never heard. Never. As a business partner, as a husband, my first marriage, as a son, it was, you're going to do this, and this is what your role is, and whether you like it or not, this is what's going to happen, and you're going to just deal with it.
Right.
So, you need to just take the time, spend a day with your kid. Take an afternoon off work, go check your kid out of school, go do something that they like doing. Go try to be their friend, but don't let them overstep that, hey, I'm still your parent boundary line. So try to spend more time with your kid. And it's not going to be easy, because if you've ignored them for 12 years, if they're 12 years old or 13 years old, and you haven't listened to their emotions, and then now they're acting out, it's not going to be fixed in a week or a month.
Right.
It's going to take years, just like it took years to get to where they are. It's going to take years to unwrap all that and deal with all the baggage that they have, and deal with your baggage. You as a parent have baggage from your parents and from your grandparents and from what you saw and what you dealt with in life. So while you're trying to unload and unpack your kids' baggage, you have to dig through your baggage and unpack your baggage to understand what led to your kids' baggage.
So would you suggest them to seek therapy or
100%.
seek reading? or a conjunction of both, because you really have to be able to put words to how you feel, right?
Exactly. So you have to be able to say, okay, and I went to a therapist for almost 3 years. There's nothing wrong with it. It just there's a stigma with people going to therapy. Like, oh, if you go to a therapist, you're crazy. My culture being one of them. Arab Palestinian culture. Like, you just take it on the chin and get up and keep going. There's nothing wrong with you. You don't need a therapist to talk to. And honestly, in the 3 years I went to a therapist, he didn't really help me.
You helped yourself.
Just me talking it out and
Right.
me saying it out loud and me taking notes and me listening to myself after I leave the session, what helped me grow.
Right.
Sometimes the therapist isn't there to help you. Sometimes the therapist gets you to say things out loud, and that's what helps you realize, okay.
And speaking of that, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's what we make our kids do.
Right.
After they have their explosive moments,
we let
right?
them talk it out.
Hey, tell me what just happened in your own words. And then when they realize it, then they come to terms with it.
But that's not just a kid thing. I've had plenty of employees in my businesses. I've had plenty of relationships outside of my, like, friends, for example. If there's ever a problem, just say, hey, okay, are you done being mad? Yes. Okay, what happened?
Right.
Let's figure out what happened. And usually 99% of the time, when you talk something out with someone and you get them to understand your point, when you're willing to listen to their point,
right,
and they're willing to listen to your point, you can come to an understanding. Just because you don't agree with someone's complete views doesn't mean that you can't understand their view. It's two different things. Just because I don't agree with what you're saying, it doesn't mean I don't understand what you're saying.
Right.
And that's what we fail to realize as adults a lot of the times. Like, these kids have feelings, they have emotions, they have
baggage.
They have things like our kids, all three of them have baggage. They've been through a divorce. They've been through a lot of different things, and it's not easy for children. So you really have to do the work for yourself first.
Yeah.
Before you can't help your kids if you can't help yourself. If you can't see what's wrong with you, you can't help your kids. And that's why these parents in this documentary, they saw that as their last resort, because they didn't even think to look inside themselves. They're like, well, let me just pass this on to somebody else because I can't figure it out.
Like, one woman even got to the point that she sold her house to pay $60,000 to send her kid to an island in Samoa. $25,000. It was a huge number, right. A number that I would not sell back in the 80s. That I would not sell my house for.
But you got to understand how desperate that parent was in that. So imagine how desperate you would have to be to sell your house to help your child.
I'm sorry.
From that perspective, no, wait, stop. This is what I'm telling you. This is what I'm telling you. I don't agree with what you're doing, but I'm trying to understand what you just did. You selling your home, just forget that this person is fixed and healed. This person is selling their home to help their child. Do you understand what that means?
That's their last resort.
That's their last resort.
Right.
So this parent can't do the work and can't see that there's anything wrong with them, but in their head, that they see it as, this is my last resort. I have to do something to help my kid, or they're going to be messed up the rest of their lives. I don't agree with what she did, but I understand what she's doing. She has the intention of trying to help her son, but she can't see what's wrong with, she can't see the connection between her baggage and her son's baggage and make the connection that, wait,
right.
What if there's another way? What if there is a way I can look inside myself and see what's wrong with me? So that's what I'm saying. I don't agree with it because she didn't do the work to fix and resolve her issues, to help and resolve her son's issues. But I understand how desperate, and as a parent, I understand how desperate she was in that moment.
Yeah. I mean, I see both sides, right? Like, I see the side of the mom thinking, okay, last resort, because in the conversation and the way that child was talking, there may not have been a father figure, right? So the mother, the mother was thinking, okay, last resort, let me send him to some kind of maybe macho camp where I'll be hurt for a little while, but this is going to be best for my child. I get that. But then on the other end, for someone to not turn the mirror on themselves to say, what role did I play to get my child here? But again, that takes a step of growth, right?
A lot of growth. It takes someone to understand. I mean, in my first marriage when it failed, I was like, I went to therapy. Like I only went to therapy because I wanted to see what did I do wrong? What was I doing wrong, and what caused me to get to where I am? Deeper. It became a deeper issue. I got to find out why I married that person,
Mm-hmm.
why I was still in an abusive relationship with my parents, toxic relationship with my parents, why I let my brothers and my parents run all over me for my whole life, and then finally, when I went through all that work and I did all that healing, I realized I didn't have boundaries. I
Yeah.
just let people do whatever they wanted to me, and I just accepted it. And then I would just have these fits where I would just blow up. I didn't know why.
Because you were the caregiver.
Right.
You wanted to people please
And nobody,
everybody.
right. And then when I needed help or when I needed something, like when I went through my divorce, no one in my family, like my dad called me one time and was like, hey, don't worry, we'll find you a new wife. That was a 2-second conversation that I had with him. Like I didn't have, I had my kids for the first 6, 7 months, basically by myself. My ex would go pick up the kids from school, spend a couple hours with them, and then I would have them full time.
So you had them 100%.
I had 100% for the first 7 months. So, and it was a lot for someone that always worked a lot and that didn't have that responsibility to be in that position. So, I had to learn about myself a lot really quickly. And I wasn't perfect. I still made mistakes. I still, I'm not a perfect parent. But I learned and I was able to grow. And people like her, the mom you're talking about, they didn't know how to look in themselves. Maybe she didn't have something happen in her life because something has to happen in your life that makes you
like a tragic event.
Tragic event has to happen. I lost my business. I lost my wife at the time. My family was broken up. I had a lot of other things going on in my personal life. So I had to be like, what the fuck is going on in my life that's causing all of this?
And you're the common denominator.
And I'm the common denominator.
Right.
So I had to. So I like I said, when I said I understood what she was saying, but I didn't agree with it. Maybe she didn't have that tragic event happen yet.
Right.
And not everybody can look and see what that tragic event is, or that can cause them to look inside themselves and say, okay, what am I doing wrong that's causing my son to do this? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I definitely do. I mean, these are heavy conversations, right?
This is a very deep conversation.
And, our baggage is something that you and I have had to unpack together. And the whole premise of this podcast is to not really air dirty laundry, right? But we're here to tell you, we went through all this tragic shit, divorce, losing businesses, bankruptcy. I mean, but we're not shameful about it. We're here to help people through these situations. We're here to help navigate women on my end and men. I know you want to change the stigma that therapy is, toxic for men or toxic for certain cultures. So I know that's one thing that we are trying to do here. But closing out this podcast and the conversation on this hell camp, these parents didn't see they had any last resort. So they already had children that were traumatized from their parental upbringing. But then they threw them into something that was even more traumatizing. And these kids still live with trauma 20, 30 years later, because this happened in 89. Shoot, I was born in 89. So that's 35 years ago. And these kids that were in these survival wilderness camps that were sent there to, quote unquote, come back a civilized person, they're still drug abusers. They're still acting out. They're still being the same people that they were. So this podcast was truly about looking at yourself as a parent. Look at the role that you play in your child's life. Look at your child's behavior. Take a few minutes to really connect with your child. Spend some time with them. If you feel that you don't have enough time, create the time, because they don't stay little for long. And you want to make sure that you're making good memories and you're not that parent sending your child off to these crazy wilderness camps. But Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in, and stay tuned for another episode